The best start that you can give your garden this year is taking time to plan it out. Thinking about what grew well last year, what challenges your garden faces, and what you actually want to harvest and eat. I've been thinking about these things and using them to select varieties and plan exactly how I'd like to lay out my crops this year. Let me show you how I'm doing it. It is beautiful and calm right now in the garden, but over the past couple of weeks, it has taken a battering. We've had storm after storm. The garden is still quite soggy in areas from all of the rain. The polycrop here is filled to the brim with anything that we could find that could have potentially blown away in the storm. And it's really got me to thinking about how windy it is here in general, even in the summer, and all the other challenges that the garden faces. And I'm reflecting on last year and years previous and thinking about what can I do to make the garden better. And so I'm going to take you through my process, so my thought process of going through how to plan out what I'm growing, evaluating issues in the garden, and then I'm going to show you what I have planned. So I've got all of the vegetables that I'm going to grow laid out in this app, and the beds, etc. And I can't wait to show you. This is my autumn fruiting raspberry bed all along here. And we did some work to it yesterday, planting plants that I had from around the garden inside to kind of rejuvenate it, and actually topping up the wood chip paths. But I'm showing this to you not because of the work that we've done, but because of the structure around it, this trellis. And other people, other gardeners around the world will be growing raspberries without any kind of real support, especially autumn fruiting raspberries. But I need this because it's so windy. The wires and the structure help to hold them all in place. And this is a common issue in my garden: wind and plants getting knocked down. I've got asparagus, I've got, of course, the raspberries behind me. I love growing tall plants, the Verbena bonariensis as a flower. But I think it's time for me to bow to experience and stick with lower growing plants, because I get heartbroken every time I grow something and it gets knocked over in the wind. And in some cases, no trellis could have actually saved it. And so one big change that I'm going to make this year is I'm not going to be introducing any more new plants that grow any higher than about chest high, I would say, on me. And I'm going to stick with lower growing plants as well, which include making changes like no more climbing beans. And I have grown climbing beans for years, and probably 4 or 5 times out of 10, the beans will get knocked or bashed by summer storms. And so this year I'm going to be doing or growing bush beans, also called dwarf beans here in Britain. And they grow low to the ground. They produce pretty big harvest of normal sized beans, but they don't need to grow up tall. They're not going to get knocked over in the wind as much. And I am looking at a dwarf Brussels sprout as well, and looking at my options for keeping plants as low to the ground and as resilient to the wind as possible. I, like every other gardener, have my pests to deal with, garden pests. And here in the garden, I've got slugs which come from the hedge and the land over here. I've got slugs that live in the wood chip paths, along the wooden edging. I also have the New Zealand flatworm, which you may have heard me speak about in the past. The Australian flatworm, I have that one too, and a third type. And I have a new pest as of last year. And that is our 1-year-old dog, Josie. And Josie is a German Shepherd. She has a lot of energy. She wants to play and she loves to race. And she sees the garden as her playground. She was quite good last year with staying out of the beds for the most part, staying on the wood chip paths. But these days, it is a free-for-all. She is running straight through these paths. Wherever there isn't something that's going to stop her, she's going straight through, and she does laps around the garden. It's hilarious, it's sweet. It's fine now because there's not very much growing but later on there's going to be tons of things that she can destroy. And so this is one of the things I'm thinking about. Currently, the only thing that seems to be able to stop her are these hoops and netting that I have on this last bed. It's just protecting a few brassicas in here. So she stops at this and she obviously goes around because she doesn't want to go through the nets. And so I'm thinking that I might have to start netting a lot more in the garden, which I don't like to do because it is a pain to take the netting off and do work underneath and everything. But if it's going to protect the plants from Josie, but also from the cats as well, who do go in and dig around at times, then it might be a solution. The other solution is perhaps putting hurdles on one side of the bed. And I am thinking about the wind, I'm thinking about barriers and Josie. And so either hurdles, so woven panels, or potentially plants like hedging, like lavender or something along the tops of the beds. If you have any ideas that you have used or have thought of that might be able to help me, leave me a comment down below. This bank has always been a bit of a challenging space, but for the past couple of years, it has been an absolutely beautiful tapestry of wildflowers. And the ones that are all here in the middle are perennials. So you can see all of these green plants are going to regrow again this year and produce even more flowers. I love growing wildflowers because they're easy, they're beautiful, very low maintenance, and when they're perennial, they keep coming back every single year, and so they're cost effective. You don't have to pay for the plants every single year, and they really bring in the pollinators. So lots and lots of different insects that are not only going to be visiting the flowers here, but the flowers on my vegetables, on my fruit trees, and helping to boost pollination and yield. And so there are a couple of patches here on either side of this main area that's already planted up. And I have a bag of seeds waiting in my refrigerator right now for more of the same mix. And I need to get it sown very soon. And so you'll see probably in the next month or two, all of this area over here, it's going to get fresh new compost or potting mix on the top, nice and sterile, and I'm going to sow the seeds in and create some kind of barrier to stop Josie from leaping over the side and running through it, and the cats as well. And then the plan is just one big, massive, perennial wildflower area that all I have to do really is cut down and remove the spent material every year, and that's it. So pretty easy peasy. Over the years, I've been gradually moving from being more of a polyculture gardener to growing more in rows. And I think that that's just been convenience. And also because I use the hoops and netting a lot when I'm growing brassicas, so things like cabbages and cauliflower and broccoli, it's just easier to have them all in one space so I can cover the lot and then carry on. And the netting helps to protect them mainly from cabbage white butterflies. But as I'm thinking about the garden again this year, I realize that I need to infuse more polyculture into the garden. And polyculture is essentially not growing as much in rows, but having a little bit of this, a little bit of that spread out through the beds. And by doing that, if you do have a pest that comes along, they're not able to easily spread from one plant to the next, to the next, to the next. And also, when you have lots of different plants growing together, they can disguise one another and stop them from being targeted as much. Whereas if you have, say, an entire patch of carrots, the carrot root fly can just go and lay its eggs amongst all of them. Whereas if you have a little patch here and a little patch there, it helps to mitigate the risk. And it also looks really beautiful as well. And so I think not only do I want to include a lot more flowers in the beds overall, but I do want to use polyculture a little bit more. Starting the vegetable design process by going through my challenges that I've been through last year and in previous years, and also thinking about what I like to grow, what I like to eat, how I can improve my garden so that I have a lot more fun and that it's beautiful and how I want it to look. These are all things that help me go into the next step of garden planning, which is going through what I already have. So my seed collection and plants that are already waiting to be planted out. So which ones are going to go where, and am I going to keep all of those seeds? Am I going to grow those seeds? So I have gone through them all. It took me a good few hours, gone through my quite large seed collection, set aside the ones that are maybe a little bit out of date, that I really don't think that I'm going to be using, or that are just not going to fare very well in my windy garden. And then I have a collection of what's left that I can work from. And it really does help to kind of hone in on what I'd like to grow this year. So I've got all of that sorted, and the next step is planning out the garden, which is what you see here on my computer monitor. For the last couple of years, I've been using an app called Fruitful to help me to design the garden. And this year I've really started using it for the entire outdoor vegetable garden. I'm just gonna zoom out so that you can see what I've put into this plan so far. So you can see the house is over here, and I've not yet put anything around the back. It's just the main vegetable garden, and it looks so big here. It looks so big here, and yet I keep running out of space. And it really just shows that actually looking at this and planning things out really helps you keep more realistic in a certain sense. So I've got lots of different beds here. There's also some trees that I've put in. If I scroll down, I've got my composting area here. And you can see that I've filled in lots of this with plants already. There's perennials in here, so I've got the blueberries, currants, I've got fruit trees along here. These are the minaret trees and the archways of apple trees. And then there are other perennials in here, like the perennial kale is just here in this bed, perennial fennel, the perennial leeks are there. In fact, this entire bed down here is going to be perennials. I am going to be putting plants in here in this gap here that don't yet exist in the Fruit database, but I work with Fruit, and they have recently given me the permissions to be able to create new plants. So if you do start using this and you can't find a plant in there, you can send me a message and I'll probably be able to create it for you. So along here, lavender, we've got the asparagus that are already in there. The asparagus need much sturdier supports this year. Last year I used just bamboo canes and stakes and string, which was fine, but it wasn't strong enough. I also have not asparagus, globe artichokes in here. There's one plant there already. I'm going to put 2 more in, and hopefully that will create a little bit of a wind buffer for everything that's back behind here. I've decided to carry on and grow more of the dwarf Jerusalem artichokes so they don't get very tall, so they're not going to get blown over in the wind, and they produce smaller tubers, so that's going to be perfect for me. There's going to be lavender in here, and since the plants are still very small, I'm going to squeeze in some onions along here and put in some dahlias as well, just for added effect. The other types of annual crops, they're pretty much all represented. So you can see up here that I've got parsnips and chard, potatoes, and you can change the variety of potato in here as well. So you can change the potato variety here and learn a little bit more about the plants and companion planting and all of that. And yeah, there's gaps in here where I've been basically moving things around and not quite sure where to put things here. And also, if you look closely, there are tons of flowers in here. So flowers here, flowers there. And I've also put lavender at the ends of these beds, so it's kind of a buffer from the hedge here, and I think it'll look really nice as well. And I'm also doing some companion planting over here. You see carrots, onions, and I can change the amount of plants in there as well. So if, for example, I'm using a different variety that you can maybe squeeze a few more in, I could change that if I wanted to. So This is the plan so far. Raspberries, the blackberry trellises here. This bed over here, this will also be perennials eventually. And you can see that there are already some here, some rhubarb, lavender, but I'm gonna need a little bit more time to work out the design of this particular bed. So I've got some potatoes and some pickling gherkins that I'm gonna be growing in there this year. And this has been such a fun exercise, and it's given me this foundation of where am I going to put everything? How am I going to lay it all out? And it's giving me a lot of security going forward as to what my garden is going to look like this year. So that is my thought process, and that is my garden plan. So I'm thinking about my challenges, namely wind, pests, Josie. I'm thinking about the plants and crops that I enjoyed growing in years past. And I'm thinking about ways to improve the garden, to make it more resilient, to make it more fun. And that's the thing, is that when you have a garden plan and you have something visualized in front of you that you can work from, it takes a lot of the guesswork out of it. It just makes it so much more enjoyable. And I don't know about you, but last year's gardening year, it was not as fun because there were so many things that popped up in bad weather, cold weather in particular amongst them. But this year I'm feeling a lot more optimistic, especially seeing the garden all laid out on the computer like that. And if you would like to use the same garden app, it's called Fruit, and I will leave a link down in the video description to where you can sign up for free, and you can go there and start planning right now if you want to. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time for another video here on Lovely Greens. Bye for now.